Starting to make a game but unsure how you should proceed? By the end of this video, you're going to learn about 7 game design mistakes that I made so you can learn from them and not repeat them. Whether you're working on a game by yourself or with a company, I'm going to share 7 game design mistakes and how to avoid them in your next project. For the best game design tips and advice, please subscribe to my channel. Also, please hit the bell button so you're notified when I upload my next video. The first design mistake that most people make when starting out is not scoping correctly. I learned this the hard way. You get excited, you know what you want your game to be about, and you start going down a spiral of never-ending ideas. You keep adding features and features to the game.
Oh, I don't know, this TV has more features than a space shuttle.
Then you start imagining it in your head and it looks absolutely perfect. Reality sets in when it's time to actually make it. That is when the issues start. You run out of time or never get to make everything happen because of its complexity. My advice in this case would be to always start small. It might not sound as exciting, but trust me on this one.
I have been there. I have seen it.
Especially if you're a beginner. Maybe try cloning some older games like Mario Bros or even Pong as a starter. As you get more experience, you are going to be able to do more complex things, and eventually you are going to be making your dream game from scratch. Another thing you have to take into account is the size of your team. If you are working by yourself, chances are you're not going to be making the next Final Fantasy in a few short months. When you are starting, my advice is to try to think about making a 2D game as opposed to a 3D game. It will save you a lot of work and headaches when you're just starting out. As you get better, you can add more complexity to the games you create. The second mistake is to not have other people play your game. When we are making games, we are so in love with our ideas that we forget about the user who is going to actually play the game. As a result, we start adding stuff without knowing if the user understands the game. Playtesting a game is a crucial step in game design. Actually, it is probably the most important step. Your game can be great, but if the player doesn't know how to play or something in the game is not evident, then no matter how good the game is, people are not going to have a good experience with it. I think you should try to playtest at least once a week, and take into consideration it doesn't have to be professional users from a research firm. Playtesting can be your family, friends, etc. The least experienced, the better. People who don't know anything about games usually have the best feedback, because their perspective is fresh. As you start playtesting, make sure that you get new people every now and then. Otherwise, people get used to the game as well, and you might not get the best insights new users can provide. Also, it is important to mention that you have to think about who your playtesters need to be. This will depend on the type of game you are making. Are you making a game for casual players, or are you making a game for hardcore players? What is your player's target age? What games do they play? All of these are important questions to ask yourself. It is no good if you have people playtest your game who like first-person shooters, when your game is a real-time strategy game. The third mistake is to not prototype one mechanic at a time. When we design games, we start thinking of all the cool things that we want to be able to do in the game. What happens is that at the end, all of these systems feel disconnected and don't go well with each other.
I need everything in there.
So the game turns out bad. In order to have a good approach to mechanics, you need to make sure each one feels good first, and then start adding new ones after that. To give an example, if your game is a platformer, you should probably focus just on movement first. Once the character feels really good to control, then you can focus on jumping and other mechanics. This way, you make sure that all mechanics go nicely with each other. It is always good to start simple and add complexity as you move on, as opposed to adding a bunch of mechanics and then learn that they're not fun together, and you wasted precious time that you could have focused on something else. The entire point of prototyping is to save time. It doesn't matter if you do it on paper or digitally. The idea is that you prototype ideas to get feedback quickly, so you can iterate a lot and see what is working and what's not. Don't be afraid to prototype as much as you can. You are going to probably discover really cool ideas that you haven't thought about before. The fourth mistake is to focus on the story. This is kind of a controversial one, but in my experience, in a game, gameplay always comes first. You have to focus on what makes the game fun, as opposed to what is the story about. Once you have figured out a gameplay loop that is engaging and fun, you can think about the story later. And of course, This doesn't mean that the story is going to end up being bad or that it doesn't matter. On the contrary, most of the games that we know today, if not all, always focus on gameplay first. Take a look at games such as Zelda or Shadow of the Colossus. Those are two of the greatest games ever, and they both started with gameplay first. The fifth mistake, especially if you have a team, is to not have enough communication with them. The worst thing you can do as a game designer is to assume things from other team members. An example of this might be when you try to explain a concept to a programmer or an artist. People of different backgrounds interpret things differently. Always try to ask more questions and over-communicate, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. This doesn't mean being disrespectful or treating people like they are dumb. Just confirm you are aligned with what needs to happen and you understand each other. This will save you a lot of work and time in the end, and will make your relationship with other people better, because there's going to be more trust between every member of the team. The sixth mistake is when, as a designer, you don't play enough games. Imagine if you have an amazing idea for a game. You are excited, you start working on it and make it. All of a sudden, you see the exact game in some ad or somewhere else. Is it the same exact mechanic or type of game that you spent a long time designing? Well, that would be very frustrating, so make sure to always research what is out there. Sometimes you can take an existing game concept and improve it, so don't get discouraged if right now your game looks similar to another one. As I said before, success leaves clues, and a lot of the greatest games out there have already solved design problems. These are assets already out there for you to look at and leverage ideas from. So try to always schedule some time to research games, especially if you are making them. You can also make this a group task with your team members if you have one. This will create more bonding with you, as well as everyone shares their ideas and what each person found. The last mistake that you should avoid is to ignore the end user or be too attached to your ideas. Let's face it, as a game designer, you get really excited to work in certain types of games. In reality, you are designing a game for specific people to play, so you always have to have in mind that user that you are designing for. Don't design for yourself. Sometimes it is good to trust your gut when you think something is fun or is a good design decision, but don't take others for granted. Always consider the user. Put your game in front of people and let them be the final judges. It is very important to be able to act quickly during playtests and change things even if you like them. If players are telling you that something is not working or they don't understand a certain mechanic, they're probably right. Try playtesting with more people and see what they say. Sometimes it is good to ignore feedback if you really believe in something. But if it's purely something that the player is not really getting or they're getting stuck, it is better to change it or maybe even consider improving it. Your game will be a lot better because of that. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. What mistakes have you learned from designing games? I'm curious. Please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this video, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Finally, hit the bell button so you are notified when I upload my next video. See you next time!